Number 1. Okay, this is a long story. When I was 19, I moved out of my parents' house and got an apartment. It was in a relatively safe neighborhood, but still affordable. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, very modest, nothing fancy. Anyway, I was on the 2nd floor, above an old man who couldn't hear anything, and below a couple in their early 20s who fought and screamed all the fucking time. And, when they weren't fighting, they took turns having loud, obnoxious sex in the wee hours of the morning. One day, the boyfriend gets violent, and the cops take him away. The girl continues living there, but she comes down to me to let me know that he's gone, and because I was a relatively big guy then, she said that he's not supposed to come by, but she'd like my number just in case he does. This was before cell phones, so I gave it to her. I should mention that I had a girlfriend at the time, Sue, and she did not like the upstairs girl, Jen. So one night, Jen calls me before midnight. "Are you okay?" I ask. She replies, "Yes. What are you doing?" Getting to bed. I have to go to work tomorrow at 7. I work early." "Wanna come fuck me?" she says. Very direct. I've got a girlfriend, Jen. I'll talk to you later." 2 hours later, she calls me and wakes me up. She's crying. "Why don't you think I'm attractive? Why don't you want to fuck me? I saw your girlfriend and she's fat. Why don't you want to fuck me? I swear I won't tell anybody. But you have to break up with her. It won't work. She doesn't love you like I do." Keep in mind, all those words came out at lightning speed and she was drunk. She just kept prattling on like that. I couldn't get a word in edgeways. Finally, I ended up just hanging up. 30 seconds later, she's banging on my door. I decide to ignore it. She starts yelling. It's almost 2 a.m, but she's screaming, crying, banging on the door. I do the only thing I can think of. I call the police. They say it'll take 45 minutes. It took them an hour, and she was banging on the door and screaming and crying the entire time. They take her back to her apartment and calm her down. An officer takes a statement, and he keeps asking, "Was she ever in this apartment?" And questions like that. "At no point did you allow her to enter the premises?" She'd never, ever been inside my place. But she told the cops a very different story. That we'd been intimate, and that I'd kicked her out in the middle of sex without her keys or her wallet. I told the cops that he was free to search. He looked around for about 10 minutes, seemed satisfied, and then thanked me and left. At this point, it's near 4 a.m. 4:30 rolls around, and she calls me and wakes me up. She's apologizing, she's crying, she's sorry that she got like that, but she just misses him so much. At this point, I tell her I think it's a bad idea that we talk anymore. I tell her I understand how hard it is, but that I'm going to miss my work and I can't afford to miss a day's pay. She seems to get that, and she hangs up. I go to work after getting maybe 2 hours of sleep in total. I'm a zombie all day. I get home at 4:30 p.m, ready to crash. Sue, my girlfriend, was going to bring dinner by after she got off work at 8. That meant I had 4 hours to get some sleep. I get home, and my apartment is completely spotless. Somebody's come inside and cleaned it. Better yet, they vacuumed, and I still didn't even own a vacuum yet. There are freshly made cookies on the table. So I think Sue must have gotten off early. "Sue?" I say, and I walk to the bedroom. There, of course, is Jen. Naked except for thigh-high socks and a hair tie. She's lying on her back, and as I come in, she pulls her knees back to her shoulders, smiles at me and says, "Shove your fucking cock in me until I cry." I just turned around and ran out of my apartment, scared like a little boy. I would have ran all the way back to the office, but I was in terrible shape, so I walked. In the lobby, I called the police again. They came and arrested her. They charged her with some minor things like breaking and entering or trespassing, I forget which, and she spends a couple of nights in jail, since neither her parents nor friends bail her out. Behaviour like this happens for weeks. I have some friends stay at my house, including Sue, during this time, so I'm never alone because I'm worried she's crazy and might do something weird. She's constantly knocking at my door and arguing with the people staying at my place. Then, she offers to share me with Sue, offers to go down on Sue, and then eventually tries to get Sue to leave me and move in with her, and that they'll be like a lesbian Bonnie and Clyde. A week or two later, she's being evicted. I guess she was late on rent. As some form of weird protest, she paints her upper torso and face bright pink with some kind of body paint, and wears a green bikini top, as they drag her kicking and screaming out of the place. Police end up arresting her again for something. My lease is up, and I'm uncomfortable with her knowing where I live, so I move. I get an unlisted number and address. I move somewhere about 10 miles from my old place. A couple of months after I move in, there's a knock at my door on a Saturday afternoon. It's Jen. She followed me from my work during the week, then waited until Sue left, and now she wants to apologize. She says that now she's medicated. I tell her I can't let her in, and that she needs to leave. I tell her that I hope that she's better, but that she definitely cannot come in. Predictably, she goes nuts. Another call to the police as I lean on my own door to keep her from pushing it in. Another arrest. For a while, I didn't hear from her. 6 months, a year. I moved 3 states away. I broke up with Sue, for reasons unrelated to this, and I was single again. It's been about 3 or 4 years by this point, when suddenly, I get a MySpace friend request from Jen. I ignore it. Then, I get a tirade of emails. Long-winded, lacking punctuation, stream of consciousness kind of thing. Clearly, she's mentally ill. I just keep ignoring them. What else could I do? At this point, it's about 2002. It dies down a bit. In 2005, I hear from her again on Facebook. The same thing. I ignore it again. 2006, and Sue messages me out of the blue. I haven't talked to her in like 8 years. She tells me that Jen came into her work and wanted info on me, where I was, what I was doing. She was dragged out by security. 2008. Jen finds my little brother's Facebook while he's in college. She makes a road trip across 3 states to find him at school. She finds his dorm and goes to talk to him. He has no idea who she is. She threatens him. He and 2 of his friends kick her out. He calls me, and I explain the whole situation. He calls the cops. They do nothing. 6 months later, she accosts him at his work, a bar. His boss, a female, punches her square in the mouth during a fight to get her out of the building, and Jen loses 2 teeth. She sues the bar, and the owner countersues, and Jen is found mentally incompetent and placed under some form of mental hold in a facility. 2012. Jen is out of the mental illness facility and heavily medicated. Her counsellor contacts me on Facebook. They ask, would I like to help her put her past behind her? She wants to set up a face-to-face. At this point, I have a wife and I have a kid. I say, no thank you. The counsellor gets very frustrated. and tells me I'm a terrible person. 2013. Jen commits suicide by jumping off a cliff somewhere in Arizona. Her body is found months after the fact and identified by the contents of her wallet. Part of me wonders what I did to cause this. I literally never did anything out of the ordinary, or said anything out of the ordinary for that matter. I was just her downstairs neighbour for a couple of months by the time this started, and it caused over a decade of fixation. Mental illness is a hell of a thing. Number 2. Okay, so to start off with, a little background information. I'm a 19-year-old female attending community college in Oregon. My college has a lot of weird people at it. This is what it's known for around town. So, back in February, I was paired with this guy named Brian for a chemistry lab. He was significantly older than the rest of the students, probably in his early 40s. He was very tall, I'm guessing about 6'4", and just a big guy in general, kind of chubby but also had a lot of muscle. I was friendly to this guy, even though he creeped me out a little bit. If he found out we had an interest in common, he would talk about it non-stop. When lab ended, I'd have lunch in the cafeteria. He'd walk with me, and just go on and on about things we had in common, and then invite himself to lunch with me. I wasn't creeped out by this at all. It was just like he didn't understand social situations very well. Once, I tried to get rid of him by telling him I had to go to the bathroom, but he just waited for me the whole time. He would pop up everywhere. Literally anywhere I was on campus, he'd show up, even on the days he didn't have any classes. He'd also text me non-stop. I gave him my number once so he could send me notes that I missed. At this point, I still wasn't creeped out. I just thought he wanted a friend. But things got worse. He started to get flirty with me at first. He'd call me beautiful, ask if I had a boyfriend, and touch me a lot, like touch my arm or my waist, and come up behind me and massage me. He also joked that I looked 15, but he made this joke all of the time. Once he even said, "You're young enough to be my hot daughter." After this, he amped up his creepy level. In conversation, he'd always bring up his abnormally large dick and jokingly ask me if I was a virgin. When I'd get upset about this, he'd always say, "Oh, I was just kidding, you prude." Around this time, he also started showing up at my work. I never told him where I worked. He pretended to not know I was working there at first, and then after that, he'd say he was stopping by because he was in the area, or buying something. One day when I was on my computer at the school's library, he showed up and sat at the computer across from me. My computer had just run out of time, because you can only get a half an hour free computer's use each day, and he told me that he had to go, so I could use his. I went on his computer, and, me being stupid and curious, decided to check the history, since he was just on it. After a little bit of snooping, I found what was obviously his Tumblr. It had the same name, and the bio matched his description. He only had a couple of hundred posts or reboots in total. Most of his reblogs were not safe for work posts of really young looking girls. But that wasn't the most disturbing thing. He'd written tons of posts about me. His early posts were nonsense, angry rants. But on the exact date of our first lab together, he wrote a detailed account of our first interaction when we first met. He described me as a vulnerable young girl, and usually too old for his liking, but that I looked very young. My stomach churned when I read this. The posts went on and on, describing more of our interactions, him imagining having sex with me, imagining me pleasuring myself, describing how I reacted to his sexual remarks, him stalking my social media and pleasuring himself to my photos, and purposely finding out where I worked from Facebook. I immediately went home and called the police, but they said there wasn't anything they could do unless he physically put me in danger. I couldn't sleep for a fucking week after this. I notified my professor, and he switched my lab day. I changed my normal schedule around, and spent the least amount of time on campus as possible. I bumped into him a few times, but I'd just tell him that I had to go and hurry away. About a month later, as my roommate was unlocking the door at night, a man grabbed her from behind. Luckily, she's a badass muscly chick, and has taken self-defense classes before, and so she stomps on his foot and kicks him in the groin, and runs like hell. When this all went down, I was inside the house because I'd called in sick to work that day. She called the police, and they found a backpack with rope, a knife, tape, and Rohypnol right by our door. So at this point, I'm freaking the fuck out, and I tell the cops about Brian. I pull up his Tumblr page to show them, and, sure enough, there was a new post. It was a long-ass post about how I'd been avoiding him, and he thinks I found myself a boyfriend, and he was going to confront me tonight, and all about how we were going to run away together because I truly loved him. It was probably the most spine-chilling thing I've ever fucking read. Long story short, they arrested him, and found child pornography on his computer as well. So, he's soon to be in prison. What if I didn't call in sick to work that day? What if he grabbed me instead? Would I still be alive? Would I have ended up dead in his truck? Either way, Brian, you were the worst lab partner I ever had. Let's not meet again. Number 3. This memory has actually just resurfaced, due to a conversation with my dad. A little background. I was about 10 years old at the time, and my brother and I were taking swimming lessons at a public pool about 10 minutes away from our house. We would go for our lessons every Friday evening, and usually afterwards, we would just chill in the spa until my dad was ready. On this particular Friday evening, my brother and I were in the spa pool, doing kid stuff and whatnot, when I noticed a man sitting directly across from me in the spa, just kind of staring at me. The man was tall and thin. He had a very pointy nose and button-like eyes. He had very short, thin grey hair, and his skin was unusually red. I didn't think much of it at the time, as I had seen this man around the pool before, and I think my dad may have even had a conversation with him at some point. But he continued to stare, and it made me so uncomfortable that I had to get out of the spa and sat outside waiting for my dad. I started seeing him everywhere. Wherever I was, he was. Grocery stores, malls, outside my school, and always at my Friday night swimming lesson. I never told my dad about seeing him everywhere. I thought maybe I was overreacting, and I was very naive to the obvious danger. I remember one instance where I was in a department store with my mum, and I saw him down the end of every aisle we went down, and said nothing. Red flags started to go off when he decided to carry a camera around with him everywhere he went. He would always be in a completely black outfit, with his camera bag around his neck, just watching me. One day, I was at the mall with a few friends, when one of them pointed him out, before I even noticed him. I told them about the man, and the way he looked at me, and my friend's older sister advised me to tell security, so that he would be removed. As soon as he saw them coming, he got up and left. Flash forward about 2 years or so. I haven't seen my stalker friend for so long now, he's becoming a distant memory. That is, until I get called into my school office, because my uncle was here to collect me early. As soon as I saw him there, arms open, in my fucking school office waiting for me, I felt sick. It was him. I had forgotten about this man, and 2 years later, he has the nerve to come and try and get me out of school, and he has his camera with him. I marched right past him and to the office woman and simply said, "This man is not my uncle." I then walked right back to class. At lunches, he would stand outside of my school. He would wave and try to get me to come over. Or he would hold up a chocolate bar as some kind of child bait? I'm not sure. So, his random school appearances continue to the point that the school needs to contact my parents and let them know the situation. My dad was distraught, having actually spoken to this man before, and demanded that the police be contacted so we could get a restraining order or something. That's when we found out. The man was a convicted sex offender. The police took his camera and found hundreds and hundreds of photos of me, some of which were zoomed up into my bedroom windows at my own house. We got a restraining order, and thankfully, I haven't seen him since. Number 4. A little backstory. I'm a 20-year-old, short, petite female working at Subway, and I can't help but be nice to anyone, even if they creep me out a little. About a year ago, we had this guy, about 35 to 40 years old, who would come in every day for lunch. He was absolutely fascinated by my stretched ears and a few piercings that I had on my face, and always asked questions. He would sit down after I rang him out, and watch me from his table for 2 hours, non-stop, just staring at me while I helped other customers. This goes on for about 2 weeks. Every day he would ask for my number, saying he has plugs and tunnels that he wants to give me, and see me wearing them in my ears, and I always politely declined. One day, I'm alone in the store because my manager had to run to the bank. We were having a really slow day, so I was just in the back room, messing around on my phone. I heard the door chime, looked up, and there was no one there. Then I saw the man walk past the front of the store really quickly, like he was in a hurry. The store phone rings. I answer. "Thanks for calling Subway. How can I help you?" This is the girl with the nice ears, right? Yes. Who is this? Are you alone in the back room right now? Are you working by yourself? At this point, I got really creeped out and knew it was him. I hung up and texted my manager the situation so that she would hurry back. He called again, this time asking me very weird questions, like what I would do with him in a room with the door locked, if I had a boyfriend, why I was playing hard to get, stuff like that. My manager gets back, and I tell her everything. In the middle of the lunch rush, he calls again. This time, my manager answers, and to this day, she never told me what he said, but the look on her face made my spine shiver. She told him if he called again, or showed up here, she would call the police. I thought that was the end of it, but alas, I was wrong. 1 week later, I'm clocking out and getting ready to walk to my car parked out front. When I look outside, I see him standing by my car and looking inside of it. I was an idiot, and I'd left my back door unlocked. I watched him crawl inside and shut the door. The creep was trying to hide in my fucking back seat and do God knows what to me when I got inside. My manager locked the front door of our store and called the police. When they arrived, they had to pretty much drag him out of the car, and he was arrested. On him was a butcher knife, rope, and a rag with chloroform on it. If I hadn't looked up when I did, I would probably be dead right now. Number 5. This event happened to 2 close friends of mine who were living together in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the Lower East Side. It's a short story, but I thought it was terrifying, both because of what happened and because of what could have happened. Their apartment was on the 5th floor of a 5-story building. The building directly adjacent to them was only 4 stories, and the view from their living room was the roof of that building, so they rarely bothered to draw their curtains or lock their windows. One night, both of my friends were in their bedrooms getting ready for bed. They heard a crash outside and ran to the living room window, where they looked down. 5 stories below, they could see the dark figure of a man sprawled in the alleyway. They immediately called the police, who arrived and confirmed that the man was dead and had died instantly upon impact. Next to his body, the police found a wooden plank and were able to piece together the manner of his death. Apparently, the man had been watching my friends for a while and decided that that night he was going to traverse the gap from the roof of the next building to the window of their living room, using only a wooden board. There was a small knife in his pocket. This was extremely traumatizing for both of my friends, who had no idea they were essentially being stalked. Even though this happened in 2012, and they no longer live together or in that building, they both still confided in me that they still have trouble being in their house alone. I don't really blame them. So, creepy deceased stalker, I'm very relieved my friends did not ever have to formally meet you. Why, hello there, Lazy Legion. Lazy Masquerade here, obviously. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you guys to the artwork of Erin Frost. She's provided me with some of the artwork for this video, and I'm going to be featuring some more of her stuff in the future, alongside the usual pieces from Anthony Salinas, of course. Make sure to check them both out via the links in the description below if you haven't already. They create some wonderful images, you know, you can even get some pieces commissioned if you really dig what you see, so make sure to show them some love, check them out, it's all good. Be sure to subscribe and join the Lazy Legion. Check out my other videos, follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I know I sound like a broken record saying the same thing every time, but I guess once more never hurts. So, until next time guys, keep your eyes peeled. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.